Now that we've secured our 6th final under Thomas Tuchel in 15 months, booking a rematch against Liverpool later at the end of the season, it's time to dissect and discuss all the things we learned after our semi-final win against Crystal Palace. In today's video, I'm going to focus on 3 things that I learned. They will be on Loftus Cheek, Mason Mount, and Thomas Tuchel's second half changes he made that turned the game in our favour. So I hope you guys definitely enjoy. I hope you guys learned something as well too. Smash that like button, get involved in the comments. But before we get into anything, I need to get one big plug out of the way first. Today's video is brought to you by Profit Accumulator. Profit Accumulator is a match betting website, and what differentiates match betting compared to standard betting is that match betting covers all possible outcomes, essentially meaning that you know exactly what profit you're bound to get before placing any bets, and that's actually down to the system in which Profit Accumulator actually works. I mean, the website is so good, the hub is excellent. And essentially what they look to do is they look to cover all bookmaker offers against each other. I mean, you've seen it before time and time again, you know, sign up to this bookie, put in £50, get an extra 3, 50, 40, whatever to play with. And Profit Accumulator uses those same offers against each other, which actually allows you to create a pretty steady profit. And that's probably why there's over 150,000 people that have registered and actually use Profit Accumulator and match betting as a guaranteed source of side income money. So if you guys are interested, in the description below there is a free trial to use Profit Accumulator. They have some excellent tutorials if you want to get more information exactly behind how it works. As I'm stressing, it's in the description below. Try out for yourselves, you guys. And getting back to the video, now we kick things off, and the first thing that I want to discuss is the changes made by Tuchel in the second half, because what I say in the first point will link into the second point and the third point in today's video. The tactical changes Tuchel made definitely helped turn this entire game around in our favour. As Tuchel said afterwards in this post-match interview, of course, when we started the game, Palace actually surprised them based on how they approached the game and how they played. Originally, the system was supposed to find different solutions against a Crystal Palace team that Tuchel assumed he was going to play against. However, at this level, you guys, you should always take your opponents very, very seriously, which makes the tweaks made in the second half even better. And this is why I like Tuchel so much, you guys, because he gives us this tactical surprise factor which gives us another edge and a bigger advantage against most teams. Essentially, we kind of use like this asymmetrical 4-3-3 system in a sense. You know, Jorginho was the lone guy in the 6th position. He did have the support of Reece James that was entitled to like drift and field at times, give George protection when he needed it. And interestingly, we saw Mason Mount dropping deeper, playing in like a left 8 role, and Loftus Cheek playing further forward, looking to receive behind the Crystal Palace midfield lines. By making this shift, you guys, it allowed us to find solutions against Crystal Palace's very defensive approach that we just couldn't find in the first half. You know, Palace in that first half, they were outmanning us in midfield. They were forcing us to play side to side, and you know, our midfield players were constantly getting pressed and closed down, breaking down many moves. In the second half, with those changes being made though, this allowed us to play a lot more vertically. You know, when you've got Mount, Loftus Cheek receiving in those half spaces, they got great ability on the half turn. Not just any guy can play in a position like that. This was creating space between the lines. This was allowing us to create overloads down the flanks. And most importantly, this was engaging the Crystal Palace defense and stretching their defensive line. On top of this, when you got Timo Werner, who's on top 4, looking to make runs in between defenders too, it was too much for Crystal Palace to handle in the end. And the main point I want to stress is the creative solutions that we could find after adapting how the midfield was used. We could play with more verticality. We saw players breaking the lines, driving the ball upfield. We saw more movement being made in behind, and we saw the ball being released a lot quicker due to passes finding players in better positions. So you might be wondering now, Nini, where exactly are you going with this? Well, my main point is, are we seeing signs that we will see more of this asymmetrical 3-man midfield for next season? Already reports have come out over the past few days suggesting that Tuchel is looking to evolve how the midfield plays. And we all know this by having a DM. A DM unlocks a team, and they unlock this team because they give more confidence to the forward players who know they have protection in behind them. And when potentially next season, you're going to be blessed with Gallagher, Mount, Loftus Cheek, Cover, even Kante, players that perform at a high level playing as box-to-box mids. It kind of feels like it would be an absolute waste not to harness this type of midfield talent that Tuchel's going to have for next season. For me, I've always had very fond memories of Chelsea teams that relied upon incredible defensive midfield players. Of course, we can't forget legends like Makelele, Mikel, Matic. It's always personally been a Chelsea thing for me, and ultimately, when you use midfield like this, it just creates more goals and more chance creation. So potentially, are we seeing further glimpses and signs of what to expect from Tuchel for next season? Now, let's move forward to the next thing that was learned, and that is Mason Mount's incredible form. In the last 3 games, that's been 4 goals and 2 assists. That's now taken his tally to around 26 goal contributions, 12 goals and 14 assists. Every season, the player just grows and grows and grows, and the numbers reflect it. But what I'm liking about Mount in particular right now is the role he is now allowed to play in. Being given that free role in behind strikers has allowed him to just pick up spaces and run between the lines. And I think for me, ultimately, this has been the best factor in the recent upturn in Mount's form, and that's because it allows him to use some of the best abilities in his game, like his half turn, as well as the fact that now he kind of gets to face the goal when he's playing. You know, previously when he's playing in different positions, especially down the right hand side or down the left hand side, a lot of the times he's relying upon his upper body strength to kind of hold the ball up, to bring the wing backs into the final thirds, and a lot of his runs are off the ball, and it really relies upon finding the best positions on the fields to help create overloads. Now, Mount can do this particularly well, very, very well. However, with this new role that he's playing with, for me, he can express his footballing ability even more. Ultimately, receiving deeper down that left-hand channel has always brought out a different side to how Mount gets to play. And I think for me, playing in deeper positions allows him to show more of the creative options that Mount does possess. That's why, for example, recently we're seeing a lot more 1-2s. Mount's always had a very good skill set of making those late arrivals inside the box. However, when you're playing close to the goal and further away from it at times, it limits the amount of times you're able to use that skill set. Is it any surprise that in the past 2 games versus Crystal Palace and Real Madrid, Mount has scored 2 goals from 1-2 layoffs? And for me, it's the details. You know, Mount on the left-hand side is able to shoot with his right foot a lot more. He's able to open his body up a lot more too, to take more positive shots. And ultimately, he's allowed to show more of the goal threat that the player does possess. And I think now with how Tuchel is using Mount during the second half of the season, is there any surprise that in Mount's past 9 games, he's recorded 11 goal contributions? I think that's a very promising record. Already, Mount has shown that the assists and goals he make aren't the stat padded kinds. You know, these are crucial goals, with assists coming at the right time, helping us lead a game, helping us get back into a game, helping us win the game, etc, etc. Still, the guy's overall game can't be ignored. You know, a player that is able to play as a false 9, that can play wide left, wide right, that can play more in field on the left and in the right, that can play as a cam, that can play in a midfield 3 and a midfield 2. You understand the tactical implications that gives to someone like Thomas Tuchel. You know, in a game where you need to change things in the second half, now instead of wasting your time by making a substitution, you know, losing a player in the game, you can just shift the role of Mason Mount and you can rely upon excellency to come from the player. I think this is why for me, Mount is an incredibly exciting, incredible football player. And as I'm stressing, if we can condense the best parts of his game to set positions, I think we can see even greater performances from him. Now we end things with the final thing we learned, and let's discuss this Ruben renaissance. Now, you guys know me, I've been very happy to admit that I'm a big fan of Loftus Cheek. Why? I think the guy's game is unique. I love players that have unique aspects with how they play, because unique players bring unique qualities on the field. And you look at Ruben Loftus Cheek, I mean, his height, 6'3", 6'2", strong, and the way he dribbles with his feet, not using his power to get past his opponents, you know, to have that type of close control and ability to drive, for me, is very elite. And, you know, ultimately, I'll never give up on anyone if they don't give up on themselves. For me, it's just simple human economics. And I found it interesting that after the game, when Ruben was being interviewed, you know, he spoke about, you know, the hardships and difficulties that he has faced, all the setbacks he's faced from the injuries that he suffered with. Though we can't forget he was getting some severe back injuries before. Once he got over that, that ill-fated friendly came through. One of the worst ideas ever, and unfortunately he ruptured his entire Achilles, keeping it out for over 1 year. So the fact that he suffered so many setbacks, but still has that mentality strong, and that mentality to want to only play for Chelsea Football Club and make it here, I think for me that is one of the most respectable things ever, and I think he should be respected a lot more highly for his dedication, because as fans, that's always the things that we're arguing for, that we want to see from our football players. Now, the argument now is that, Ruben needs to start taking the chances being offered his way. However, ideally, I do think that maybe it isn't as fair, considering that when you actually look at his entire career from, being given the debut by Mourinho, who used him in a defensive role, to the criticism he then faced Mourinho in an ill-fated friendly. Mourinho said that he wasn't putting in the legwork, putting in the running. Seemed very harsh to put him on blast so publicly like that. And in a way, that kind of affected the image of how Ruben was seen, as he was called lazy for many years after those quotes from Mourinho. So he had to come back from that, get his confidence back. In comes Antonio Conte, and what does Conte do? He decides to play him as a cam or as a striker, which, looking back now, was absolutely crazy. At the time, I couldn't believe it. One of the stupidest things, in my opinion. And I guess the reason behind why Conte felt more comfortable using him in further forward positions was because he didn't want to coach him how to be more effective off the ball. After that season, he's out loaned to Crystal Palace, and I think that was the key season that gave Ruben the confidence to play more towards his strengths and to, get the game time and minutes that was getting taken away from him, because, we were rejecting the loan requests from the player. However, the blessing in disguise comes from Maurizio Sarri. Sarri clearly saw the talent Ruben had. However, he was not going to get in his team if he didn't work on his off-the-ball game. If you're playing in midfield at this level, your off-the-ball game has to be just as on point as your forward game. And I think now that when Ruben was finally given that direction on here's what you have to do to actually play and get in the team, something he's never had from other managers, is there any surprise that during the second half of the season, he becomes one of our standout players alongside your Eden Hazards, your Hudson-Odois, etc., etc.? Absolutely not. And then, unfortunately, that friendly that, for me, I still can't understand. You're booking a friendly in America before a Europa League final. It's crazy. And it's another example of the club letting Ruben down. So the fact that going through all these hardships, the desire to still remain here and make it here, it's got to be respected. Now, of course, at Fulham, he had his difficulties. When you've been out for over a year, where you essentially lost all the muscle in your calf due to the injury you suffered. As a human, I'd understand that, it's going to take you some time to have that proper confidence in your body. You'd be worried about breaking down. You'd be worried about every time you're knocked or tackled, or you have to use your strength and physicality. I understand that. So for me, I kind of saw last season solely as that season away to, regain back that mental confidence. And I think that's exactly why Lampard encouraged him to move out on loan to Fulham, which is very close to where his situation at home was to begin with. And by having that season, it's allowed him to come back with more confidence under Thomas Tuchel, and now Tuchel is doing something that only Maurizio Sarri has ever done, and that's given Ruben challenges and goals to achieve if he wants to make it in the first team. And Ruben, once he's given those directions, he gets that confidence to step up and show what he's about. And is any surprise that he's played so much game time? By the end of the season, he would have got more game time probably than what he accumulated under Maurizio Sarri, which says a lot about how Thomas Tuchel actually rates the player. He's been a valuable squad player for Tuchel this season, being used as a centre-back at times, being used as a wing-back recently, being used as a 6, and being used as an 8 in those rare games. And yesterday, he really highlighted what Ruben can offer if he's given more freedom to attack and has that defensive support in behind him. A unique player like this is always going to provide possibilities to the team. So it's no surprise that Ruben is feeling very confident and he wants to remain here next season. Now, we know that Gallagher is definitely returning back. People at the higher up positions want to see him back as well as Tuchel himself. So for me, it just keeps supporting this idea that are we going to be seeing some kind of 4-3-3 used next season, considering the box-to-box talents we have, and most importantly, that you're able to use 5 subs in the Premier League next season. Do you understand how much of an advantage that's going to give us? It's going to be unreal. And knowing that you have all this midfield talent to rely upon that can maintain the intensity that you want to keep in a game, for me, it just keeps painting more vivid pictures that we could be seeing this formation evolution for next season, you guys. And I think having someone like Ruben, who's proven that he is good enough to still be part of the squad, is good enough when he's relied upon as well too, and has that ambition as well too to even step up his entire performance and challenge on a first team basis. For me, every successful squad has players like Ruben. So on that note, I'm going to wrap things up, keep things moving. Thank you for watching. Get involved in the comments, you guys. On that note, I'm the EFC, this is Blue Lions TV. I'll catch you guys today with some more videos. Cool.